This kingdom idea, I hear many scholars debate whether or not there was ever a united kingdom initially, or if there were two disparate kingdoms side by side.
Oh, yeah,
and
good
so I
question.
must ask you, my
Yeah,
friend,
I like that.
what is your stance on
United Kingdom is the United Monarchy. The United Kingdom is probably not what we use because it's too much like England, but the United Monarchy is a huge thing for people. I never understood it. Why is that so important? And I think it's a lot about David, and I wrote a book on David too, and it's like I never quite understood the infatuation with David. I try to show David he was just a warlord, kind of an early mafioso who had his band, and he went around and he carved out a little kingdom, and there was nothing about Goliath and nothing about Israel in it either. He's totally Judean. That really pissed people off, that David has nothing to do with Israel. And I developed that idea in my book, this book we're talking about. So the United Kingdom, or the United Monarchy, is an attempt, I try to show, of Judah, right? There's two kingdoms. Judah tries, the Judean kingdom and thereafter tries to say, we were already at one time connected. Jerusalem was the capital that our God chose. The Davidic dynasty was the one that he chose to be the ruler over the nation. And it's all an attempt to bring people to Jerusalem, to the Davidic dynasty, and say the reason we have two kingdoms was because Israel sinned. The northern kingdom sinned and they left us. That resonates with people really well too, because it just makes sense. It makes sense to say, we're not trying something new. We're going back to the way it was before, right? And that's the same kind of principle that we have with the Pentateuch, with the 5 books of Moses. We can be a people without a kingdom because we were in the past. And so they create a mythic past in order to say what we're doing in the present is not new, because no one wants to try out something new. And so the Davidic kingdom idea, the United Monarchy, well, the kingdoms can be joined because they were already joined a long time ago in the most glorious period of our history. And then they broke apart and divided. Well, the archaeological record makes that very problematic. There's nothing to support a united monarchy. And you have all these guys arguing, and some of them are critical scholars occupying huge positions at public universities. They have religious backgrounds. You have to look at some of the professors, where they come from in their training. And you see that many of them came from seminary and they still have religious affiliations and so forth. They're not Bart Ehrmans. They haven't left the fold of that. They still hold on to that at some level. The way they do it is just to make things fuzzy. To say, well, it could be a small United Kingdom, or David. It's like, it's just such a neat principle to set out. This is an attempt by the Davidic dynasty to say that we are the ones who are supposed to rule. We already did it at the beginning. We broke apart, and we need to go back to the God-ordained plan as it was all along. And that principle is picked up in a later point by the people who are trying to say, the covenant, Sinai, the laws, the 10 Commandments, Genesis, all of that. That is where we're going back to, even though that's a mythic past that is even more grandiose than the one about the United Monarchy.
Two things come to mind with what you just said. Powerful is post-Persia, going into the Hellenistic period. Let's just say Persian Hellenistic for the sake of argument, because I think it's a fuzzy area in terms of fully knowing how to nail it.
I think they're basically the same. You have an empire that had been conquered by Alexander the Great, and basically things are the same. So it's very hard to distinguish between Persian and Hellenistic stuff.
And so I'm looking at this, and two things I think of, and one of them I think we'll tackle before we address this issue about the United Monarchy idea. I'm curious to know, post-defeat, they're looking at these massive empires who have a working political system that seems to be better than what they have. So I don't know about you, but I imagine people in failure are not only probably living with, let's just say, animosity toward the larger people, but also they have to compete in order to even be anybody, they got to compete, and they see it's working. So they model stuff off of the empires in which conquered them, but also they want to spin it. They want to give their own twist on it. They create a mythical past, a history. And I think about the Samaritans, and I think about the Jews. We hear this United Monarchy. I wondered, and this is complete speculation.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if they invented some ancient unity between these two groups by saying we had a northern-southern united monarchy, meaning you Samaritans from Samaria and us Judeans were actually, we got along in the ancient past. And so they're trying to craft this story as if two Yahweh worshiping sects sometime later, 5th, 4th century BCE, crafting an ancient history where they were united. I don't know.
No, that's the area that I work on Ezra and Nehemiah, where we have this conflict between Samaria and Jerusalem emerging in the first place. I mean, it goes back to these two kingdoms that existed in the Iron Age. And the northern kingdom, Israel, was just 10 times greater than the Judean kingdom. The Bible is a Judean product, but it's from a kingdom that is 10 times smaller and 10 times less significant than the northern kingdom. So during the Persian period and Hellenistic period, you have them reemerging, and Samaria is still stronger. Judah is trying to take that position still, and they're trying, and many of them are fighting with each other and want to break apart, and some of them are trying to come together. And so the Book of Chronicles, which is clearly a Hellenistic book, I mean, we have colleagues who are trying to say it's a Persian period, but it's so clearly Hellenistic because it presupposes the end of the Persian period. Like Ezra and Nehemiah tells the whole story of the Persian Empire. You can't say that's from the Persian Empire because it's reflecting back on it. So, and it's trying to, in the Hellenistic Empire, trying to say, this is how we succeeded during the Persian times. We can succeed now. And the conflict between North and South continues on. And Samaria versus Jerusalem and all that. And, the parable of the Good Samaritan from the Gospels. I'm not a New Testament scholar. I don't know where it is. But I do write on it in the book. I just forgot right now. But it is that, I don't know if you've developed that on your own work. Have you thought about that? When the parable of the Good Samaritan is like, it's an answer to who is my neighbor. Mm-hmm. And then Jesus tells the story about the Samaritan, who's better than the Levite, who's better than the Judeans and so forth, who takes care of this guy.
Right.
And that is an attempt to say, my neighbor, we are one people. The North and the South, we can. So Jesus was very much about, there is a larger community. It's not just about Judeans. It's not just about Jews. There's a larger kind of concept of a more broader people of Israel, if you will. And a lot of people have read the Good Samaritan parable as, you should love everyone, or everyone is our neighbor. But Jesus didn't tell a story about the Roman soldier. It's not like trying to say we should love the Roman soldiers are our neighbors. No, it's the Samaritans. They're our neighbor. And that is just continues the kinds of text that we find in the Book of Chronicles and so forth that try to show, Judah must treat Samaria better. Samaria must treat, and it's just all one way it develops.
And it kind of also tells me, as someone who sees it all the way here in this late 1st century material, possibly early 2nd, depending on the book, is that there's still a struggle between these two category of people. And so this goes on for centuries where they're competing. And I imagine there are other versions of Judaism.
Well, it really, what's the truth behind your position is that it really starts to emerge under the Persian and Hellenistic period in a new way. So there are these kingdoms that fought with each other, but there was no struggle because the northern kingdom was just strong and didn't even care about Judah. The northern kingdom gets wiped out. It's Judah, the southern kingdom, who cares about trying to usurp that position, usurp that tradition, and trying to make it their own. So Jerusalem, after Samaria is gone, Jerusalem's trying very hard. But that all of it is very much a part of, after they're both of them gone, now Judah and Samaria are struggling. And so much of the biblical record in the Hebrew Bible belongs to the same conversation that is in the New Testament. And a lot of scholars want to say, oh, there's the Old Testament, and the Old Testament period ends, and then there are these centuries, the intertestamental period, and in the New Testament, as if there's this big gap. My scholarship is saying there's no intertestamental period. It's the intertestamental period is when the Bible emerged in the first place.
Wow. Wow. Drop your mic. All right. That was powerful.